This happened just a few weeks ago while I was working a night shift at the local hospital. I've been a nurse for over a decade, but this place always felt a bit off. The hospital sits on the outskirts of town, and while it's tidy, there's something strange about it. Every night I walked those same fluorescent-lit halls. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air, but something felt different. On my second shift, I heard a low humming sound coming from an empty patient room. I figured it was just the air conditioning acting up, so I let it go. As I moved between rooms, the humming turned into whispers. At first, they were soft, but they started to echo, bouncing around the walls. I thought maybe I was just tired. Long hours can play tricks. I focused on my tasks instead. But over the next few shifts, I started noticing strange things. Shadows flickered in my peripheral vision. Every time I looked, nothing was there. I wondered if I was losing it. Maybe the exhaustion was catching up with me. I pushed those thoughts down and kept working. Then, I found something odd in the patient records. There were names I didn't recognize, charts for people I was sure I'd never treated. It made my stomach churn, but I tried to shake it off. I was just tired, right? One night while checking supplies, I saw something chilling. A child stood at the end of the second-floor hall. I blinked, thinking I was imagining things, but when I walked closer, the child vanished like smoke. My heart raced. I told myself it was a trick of the light or my imagination. I returned to the nurse's station, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. But those whispers kept growing louder, more demanding. I felt cold, like something had passed through me. One night, while caring for a patient, I noticed someone was watching me. I turned quickly and there was nothing there, just an empty room. The air felt heavy, thick. I started to think the hospital held secrets I wasn't meant to know. The patients I thought were real might not exist. My mind felt twisted in confusion. I tried to stay focused on my work, but it was hard. The whispers echoed constantly, and I wondered if I had slipped into a nightmare. One evening I heard a soft voice say my name. I turned, facing an empty corridor. I took a deep breath, but it didn't help. I stood there, my heart pounding, staring into the silence. Was the hospital really just a place for healing, or was something darker hidden away? And could I trust my own mind anymore? I didn't know what to think. The hospital felt alive, watching me, waiting. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was as if I walked in a dream, unable to see the truth. At some point, I had to accept there was something lurking in the shadows. I just didn't know what it was. And as I continued my shifts, the whispers grew louder, gnawing on my sanity, leaving me questioning everything. As I arrived for my next shift, the hospital felt different. The air was thick, almost electric, and the humming from before echoed faintly in my mind. I shrugged it off, convincing myself that I just needed to get through the night. After all, I'd faced tough situations before. I began my rounds, checking in on patients and administering medication. But the whispers that had haunted me before were back, now swirling through the air like a ghost. This time they felt insistent, almost pleading. The sound tickled the edge of my consciousness, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. There was a moment during my shift when the lights flickered. I paused, looking around the empty hallway. Just when I thought I'd imagined it, I felt a cold breeze rush past me. I turned, dropping my clipboard as my heart raced. That's when I noticed it. A door at the end of the hall that I was certain had been locked. Now, it was ajar, creaking slowly. Unable to resist, I stepped closer. The whispers morphed into muffled words, something I couldn't quite make out. They sounded familiar, like echoes of lost conversations. I pushed the door open wider, and a wave of cold air hit me. The small room was dark, the only light seeping in from the flickering overhead bulb. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity won. Inside, the room looked like a storage closet. Shelves lined with dusty boxes were scattered about, but one box caught my eye. It was old, worn, and barely held together. It had a name etched on the front, one that sent shivers through me. Emily Clarke. I couldn't place the name, but it felt significant. As I reached for the box, a loud crash echoed behind me. I turned quickly, heart hammering in my chest. but the hallway was empty. I took a deep breath, my skin prickling with unease. I turned back to the box, hands trembling. I had to know what was in it. When I opened it, a faded journal sat inside, pages yellowed with age. As I flipped through, I noticed odd entries, dated years before I started working there. The words were frantic, filled with fear and longing. "Help me," one entry read. "They're watching me. I see children in the hall. They want something. I don't know what." My breath caught in my throat. I felt the urge to turn back, but I was rooted in place. What was happening in this hospital? I flipped to the last entry and my stomach dropped. "Tonight I have to leave." Suddenly the whispers erupted into frantic cries, drowning out my thoughts. I slammed the box shut, shoulders tight with panic. It was too much. I had to get out, to breathe. Just as I turned to leave, something tugged at the hem of my scrubs. I froze. I could feel the weight of a small hand gripping me, chilling me to the bone. I jerked away, bolting for the door. I rushed into the hallway, eyes wide. But the child from before was gone. Only shadows and flickering light remained. My mind raced as I stumbled back to the nurse's station, trying to make sense of everything. I glanced back down the hall, dread pooling in my gut. I had stumbled onto something I shouldn't have. The whispers were only the beginning. I had to find out who Emily was and why her words echoed in the night. And deep down, I felt it. I wasn't alone. Then everything went dark. I woke up on the floor of the nurse's station, disoriented and gasping. My hands struggled to push myself up, but everything felt heavy, both physically and mentally. The cold tiles grounded me for a moment, and I let the silence settle in, listening for any sign of movement. As I stood unsteady, I caught a glimpse of the clock. An hour had passed since I'd last remembered anything. What had happened? I felt a mix of confusion and dread. The whispers were still playing in the background of my mind, but they seemed quieter now, as if waiting for something. Pushing the panic down, I headed toward the break room to collect myself. I stopped short when I noticed the flicker of shadows at the end of the hallway. The door to that storage room was now closed tightly. Had I left it open? I didn't want to go near it again, but a strange pull made my feet move toward it. Maybe I could find a flashlight. The power was unstable tonight. I turned to the supply closet, but when I opened the door, it was unnaturally dark inside. Then, I heard it. A soft, giggling sound echoing down the hall. My breath hitched. It was chilling and innocent at the same time, echoing off the walls like it didn't belong in this place. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "Get it together," I muttered under my breath. But curiosity won, as it always did. I slowly made my way back toward the storage room, my heart racing again. With each step, the laughter grew louder, morphing into whispers that curled around my mind. I hesitated, feeling torn between urgency and a paralyzing fear. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the laughter stopped. It was replaced by heavy silence, a silence that pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. I could feel something shifting in that dark room. My instincts told me to leave, but deep down, I needed to confront whatever was there. I opened the door. The sudden darkness that spilled out was stifling. I fumbled for the light switch, not daring to step in without seeing first. Just as I flipped it, the lights flickered back to life. And that's when I saw it. The box was gone. In its place, a child's drawing hung crookedly on the wall, depicting a hospital scene. Stick figures of children played in the hall, their eyes wide and filled with something I couldn't define. At the bottom, a single phrase was scrawled in messy handwriting: "Help us." My heart raced as the weight of the air shifted again. It was suffocating. I stepped back, bumping into something cold and solid. My breath caught in my throat. I whirled around, and there it was. A small figure stood behind me, barely illuminated by the light. A child in pale pajamas stared at me with wide, haunting eyes. I couldn't scream. The only thought in my mind was Emily. The child's mouth moved, but no sound came out. I felt ice stretch through me, a primal instinct to run. But something held me in place. Then she pointed down the hallway. I wanted to ask her what she wanted, but my voice wouldn't work. The shadows behind her started to coalesce, and before I could make sense of it, she vanished, leaving only a chilling breeze in her wake. I had to find out what she wanted. There was no other choice. But as I turned to dart down the hall, the lights flickered once more, and the whispers exploded back into my ears, drowning out my thoughts. I felt the walls closing in. I shoved my way into the corridor, seeking answers, and perhaps an escape. That's when I realized I wasn't just running from what was in the shadows. I was also running toward the truth. I sprinted down the dim corridor, the whispers swirling around me like fog. Each derogatory word mixed with a child's laughter echoed in a dissonant choir. I wanted to cover my ears, wanting to drown them out. Instead, I pressed on, heading for the nurse's station. Maybe someone would still be awake, maybe they could explain what was happening. I rounded the corner, only to find the station deserted. Monitors glowed softly, displaying patient vitals like a heartbeat wanting to share its secrets. The chairs sat empty, heavy with shadows. I took a deep breath, trying to quell my racing heart. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling in the stillness. No response. Resigned to continue on my own, I turned back toward the main entrance. The flickering overhead lights cast distorted shadows across the floor. I stopped, noticing something unusual, a trail of small handprints smeared against the wall. They were faint, but unmistakable. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. The child had touched this place. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the far end of the hall. It sounded like a door slamming shut. My breath caught again as the shadows danced, taunting me. I knew I should run, but curiosity clawed at my insides. Maybe the child was leading me somewhere. I forced my legs to move, stepping cautiously toward the sound. As I made my way deeper into the hospital, the air grew colder, and the whispers intensified until they filled my head like static. I rubbed my temples, trying to make sense of it all. Where was Emily? She had been part of everything, and now she felt further away than ever. Then I saw it, the pediatric wing. The door stood ajar, a thin sliver of light spilling out into the hallway. I hesitated, remembering the child's haunting gaze, the urgency in her silent plea. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was eerily quiet. Cartoon characters decorated the walls, but something felt wrong. The toys lay scattered, untouched, as if they had been left in a rush. At the center of the room was a small bed, meticulously made with a name tag on the pillow. Emily. My heart dropped. I stepped closer, the name sending shockwaves through my body. Was this a sick joke? I'd seen it just a moment earlier. Yet there it was, an innocent reminder of the girl I'd come to this hospital to help. But how? The door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, spinning around. A cold grip seized my throat, tightening unbearably. I couldn't breathe. The whispers crescendoed, crashing down like waves. A figure emerged from the corner, still shaded by darkness, blocking the only exit. Then I recognized it. Another child, smiling softly yet unsettlingly. This one wore a hospital gown, eyes wide and pleading. I stumbled back, instinctively reaching for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The child raised a finger to their lips, mimicking the quiet they demanded. "Help us," a voice echoed in unison, and my world started to tip. What was happening? As dread washed over me, my eyes darted back to the bed. The figure stepped closer, pulling the shadows with it. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I had to break free. I needed answers. I charged at the door again, bracing myself against the solid barrier. But suddenly, in the blink of an eye, everything went dark. I woke up on the floor, disoriented. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. Blinking rapidly, I pushed myself up, the cold tile biting into my skin. Panic surged as I remembered the child in the hospital gown, the whispering voices demanding help. The room was empty now. The bed where Emily had been was still made, but the name tag had vanished. "Emily," I whispered, feeling my heart pound. I scrambled to my feet, every instinct screaming at me to get out. The door swung open without resistance, and I bolted back into the hallway. But instead of the familiar corridor, I found myself in a different section of the hospital, one I didn't recognize. The walls were a sickly shade of green, and the flickering lights overhead cast strange shadows that seemed to move on their own. Voices echoed faintly, indistinguishable but urgent. I needed to find a way out. I stumbled through the desolate halls, my senses heightened. Each faint sound made me jump. Was that a footstep behind me? I turned, ready to confront whatever was lurking, but found only silence. Then I saw it again. The trail of handprints clearer now, leading a further down the corridor. They glimmered faintly in the dim light, almost inviting. I followed them against my better judgment, each print another tug on my curiosity. As I turned a corner, I spotted an open door. A flickering light came from inside. Hope surged through me. Maybe someone was here, someone who could explain what was happening. I approached cautiously. When I peered inside, my breath hitched. It was a room filled with toys, bright, colorful, and yet oddly unsettling. They were arranged meticulously, each one facing the center of the room as if participating in some silent gathering. A soft tune played from a broken music box, the melody both charming and deeply eerie. In the center stood a group of children, their faces turned toward an empty space. They giggled quietly, their laughter sending chills down my spine. But as I stepped closer, the laughter died down, and they turned to face me. Their eyes were hollow, void of any innocence. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices flat and echoing. My heart raced. I took a step back, suddenly aware that this was not a sanctuary, but a trap. That's when I saw it. A figure looming behind them, obscured in darkness. The shape shifted, taking on a form that felt like it belonged to nightmares. I couldn't breathe. It stepped forward, pulling the shadows closer as the children's laughter resumed, now sounding sinister. Everything around me spun out of control. The room began to shrink. I turned to escape, but the exit had vanished. The laughter grew louder, enveloping me. I stumbled backward and crashed into something hard. Panic surged through me as I turned to find myself face to face with the gray figure, now mere inches away. Its presence sent a wave of cold rippling through my veins. In a blinding flash, everything went dark again. This time I didn't know where I was. My mind raced. I struggled to remember how I got here and what had just happened. Where was Emily? And what had I just walked into? Questions flooded my mind, drowning in uncertainty. There was no time to waste. I blinked into the dark, trying to steady my breath, desperate for answers. My muscles ached from the tension as I stood in the dark. Everything felt wrong, like I was caught between two worlds. I called out, "Hello?" My voice echoed, swallowed by shadows. No one answered. The darkness pressed in around me, wrapping me in a cold embrace. I forced myself to move. I couldn't stay here. I took one hesitant step forward, listening intently. The silence felt heavy, but as I wandered deeper into the shadows, I heard something. A soft, rhythmic tapping. I followed the sound, my pulse quickening. As I rounded another corner, the flickering lights revealed a large window at the end of the hall. Bright light spilled through, illuminating the floor in an ethereal glow. I hesitated. What was on the other side? With a deep breath, I approached. The window displayed a scene that made my stomach twist. Outside, I saw the playground from my childhood, but it was different now. The swings swayed back and forth with no wind, and the slide glowed faintly in the dark. Then I noticed something crouching by the sandbox. A shadowy figure, smaller than me, was huddled down, moving its hands in the sand. I strained to see, but the figure moved at an odd angle, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet my feet felt glued to the floor. "Come play," it called out, its voice childlike yet void of joy. I shivered. It wasn't right, not at all. The figure gestured for me to join. "We're waiting for you." Before I could react, the flickering lights above me died completely. I was plunged into darkness again. My heart raced as I spun around, panic rising. I couldn't stay here. I could hear whispers around me, overlapping voices calling my name. "No!" I yelled, my voice shaking. Leave me alone! A sudden movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see the shadowy figure darting toward me. I stumbled back, colliding with a wall, the cold surface grounding me momentarily. I barely caught my breath when the whispers turned into laughter, my name echoing in the chaos. Help us! It was a chant now, filled with urgency. I felt a surge of determination. These voices, were they trapped? Were they calling for help? As fear battled against the need to understand, I pushed off the wall and dashed back the way I'd come. I turned countless corners, each hall blending into the next, until I stumbled into a room where a single, flickering bulb illuminated an old desk. Papers were strewn about, but one note caught my eye. It was hastily written. The ink smudged, as if it had been written in a hurry. Find us a way out. They won't let us go. A chill ran through me. Who were they? And who was keeping them here? Before I could process the message, a loud bang echoed behind me. I whipped around and gasped. The shadowy figure stood just outside the door, its face hidden in the darkness, but its eyes glinting like sharp knives. It reached for me, its body twisting unnaturally. I sprinted out of the room, my heart pounding. I had to get away, but as I turned another corner, I realized the halls were shifting again. The exit I had seen before had vanished. I was lost, and whatever was chasing me was closer than ever. I turned left, then right, but nothing looked familiar. The hallways felt endless and consumed me in their darkness. My breath came in quick bursts. Think, I told myself. Just think. A distant sound echoed through the maze, soft laughter, light and playful. It struck me as eerily familiar, like echoes from a dream. I felt my skin crawl again. I had to focus. No more distractions. I pressed onward, hoping to find a door, a window, anything. Then I spotted a faint light flickering up ahead. As I approached, the laughter grew louder. It seeped into my bones, igniting a deep-seated fear. I stopped dead in my tracks. From around the corner came a group of small figures, their forms blurring in the low light. I couldn't tell how many there were, but their voices rang clear. "Come play with us," they sang, a twisted melody that set my heart racing. Each figure swayed in unison as if performing some kind of sinister dance. I wanted to turn back, but I was frozen watching them. They wore tattered clothes, their faces obscured in shadow. The laughter morphed into whispers again, and I caught fragments of words. "Help! Stay! Play! We're waiting for you!" one cried out, and then another echoed, "Forever!" I stumbled backward, the weight of dread pulling me down. I couldn't let them sway me, no matter how tempting. Something wasn't right. I forced myself to look away. I need to find a way out. As I turned to run, the flickering light flickered violently, plunging the hallway into darkness once more. I felt a chill wash over me as panic surged. I sprinted down the hall, my mind racing faster than my legs. Each footfall echoed against the cold tiles, and the laughter followed, closer, more insistent. Suddenly a doorway appeared, slightly ajar. Without thinking, I lunged for it and burst inside. I slammed the door shut behind me, leaning against it to catch my breath. My eyes darted around. The room was filled with medical equipment, burnished metal, plastic cases, and a bed in the corner. It felt like a makeshift clinic. I spotted a clipboard on the bedside table and snatched it up. The paper was filled with scrawling notes, but one line caught my eye. "The patients become restless after nightfall. We cannot keep them here." Before I could comprehend what that meant, I heard the sound of shuffling from the other side of the door. I pressed my back against it, my heart pounding. Were the children following me? Were the shadowy figures already here, trying to break through? As the shuffling grew louder, I remembered the note from the other room. "Find us a way out." I couldn't let fear consume me. I had to know what was happening, who these voices belonged to. I needed to find a clue, a way to escape this nightmare. Reluctantly, I stepped away from the door, peering around the room for any sign of hope. That's when I saw it. A window at the far end, slightly cracked open. Outside, I could see the night sky, clouds swirling ominously. But just as I took a step toward it, a shrill scream pierced the air. It came from the other side of the door. The figures were close. A surge of urgency hit me. I had to get out, before they found me. I bolted toward the window, every instinct screaming at me to get away from the door. The scream sliced through the air again, deepening my urgency. I struggled with the window. The frame resisted against my grasp, but I pushed harder. The cold night air beckoned like a lifeline. Finally, I pried it open just enough to squeeze through. I glanced back at the door, fear gnawing at my insides. Would they come through? I wasn't sure how long I had until they found me again. With a final look over my shoulder, I clambered out, landing in a heap on the grass outside. The world outside felt oddly peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos inside. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow across the ground. I pushed myself up, brushing dirt off my clothes. This wasn't the escape I had envisioned. The lawn stretched in front of me, but where was I? I squinted at the building looming behind me. It looked familiar yet alien. My memories were fuzzy like old photographs blurred with time. I sprinted toward a cluster of bushes, using them as cover. I needed to catch my breath and gather my thoughts. I leaned against the rough bark of a tree, and for a moment, I closed my eyes. The laughter echoed back from the hospital, growing fainter. I opened my eyes, but I still felt unsettled. I had to get to safety. As I moved deeper into the trees, I heard a different sound. Soft, rustling. It didn't seem to belong to the wind or the branches. The noise became clearer as I crept forward, a whispering, rising and falling like a song. I froze, straining to hear more. "Help us," a voice murmured, low and pleading. It didn't sound like the children from before, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Please." The desperation permeated the air. "Who's there?" I called out, but my own voice trembled and felt weak. There was no response, just the continued whispering, urging me to follow. My instincts told me to run, yet something deeper pulled me toward the sound. I took a step, then another. The whispers blended into a soft cacophony as I pushed through the trees, urgency propelling me onward. That's when I stumbled into a small clearing, and there, amid the ominous shadows, stood a figure. It was tall and bent, cloaked in darkness. I could barely make out its features. The air thickened with tension as I took in the sight. This wasn't just a trick of the light. It felt real and sent waves of dread crashing over me. The figure extended one long arm, pointing toward a distant glow nestled among the trees. "Find the way," it beckoned, voice echoing throughout the clearing. "You must hurry." Fear gripped my heart again, but there was an undeniable curiosity gnawing at me. It felt like a door opening in the dark, possibility brushing against my skin. What did it mean? What waited there? Before I could decide, the whispers intensified, merging with the rustling of the wind. Each sound closed in around me, and suddenly the ground beneath my feet seemed to shift. Panic filled me. I had to choose: follow the figure or run back into the woods. The shadows danced around us, and I knew I couldn't hesitate. Whatever waited at the end of that path could hold the answers I needed, or lead me deeper into the nightmare. But if I turned away, I risked losing my last chance to escape this horror altogether. The figure lingered slightly before turning away. I felt the urge to follow, to see where that glow might lead. It was dangerous, I knew, but I had little choice. I was already trapped in this nightmare. I stepped carefully, the underbrush crackling beneath my feet. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence, like the world was holding its breath. I didn't look back. The urge to flee was strong, but I pushed forward. The glow pulsed in the distance, a beacon that promised clarity. As I approached, the light washed over my face, revealing a circle of stones arranged in a perfect line. In the center, a small fire flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the nearby trees. I hesitated, my heart racing. The place felt otherworldly, like a scene from one of those surreal dreams I couldn't shake. "Help us!" A voice fluttered again from the darkness. I spun around, searching for the source. This time the voice was different, urgent, yet soft. It felt familiar, like the echo of a long-lost memory. I stepped closer to the fire, my eyes scanning the clearing. I could make out shapes in the shadows now, faces and forms that seemed to watch me. My stomach dropped as I caught sight of a small group huddled against the trees. They looked like kids, their bodies curled up as if they were trying to vanish into the ground. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaky. The figures didn't answer, but their eyes glimmered in the firelight, full of expectation. They seemed to regard me with a mix of fear and recognition. Suddenly, from the figure back in the shadows, a dark hand shot up, pointing at me. "You must find the way!" It growled again, but now it was louder. The sound cut through the clearing, vibrant and unsettling. I took a step back, instinct telling me to retreat. Just then I caught movement from the corner of my eye. One of the children broke from the group and approached me step by step. "You've come back. Help us," she pleaded, her voice a whisper mingling with the wind. A sorrowful weight hung in her gaze, pulling me in. "Back?" I echoed, confusion swimming in my mind. Why did I feel this strange connection to her? But before I could ask more, the whispers became frantic, rising into a cacophony that set my nerves on edge. "She's the one. She has the answers," they cried, intertwining with the crackle of the fire. I stepped back, feeling a rush of cold sweat. "What answers? I don't understand." Panic tightened my chest as the child reached out, her small hand trembling. Then it happened. A loud crack resonated through the clearing, and I jumped. The ground shook slightly, and I lost my balance, falling. The chaos of screams erupted from the shadows, echoing in my ears. My heart raced. Something was coming, something more sinister than I anticipated. I clawed my way back to my feet, ready to escape this madness. But a hand gripped my arm. A warm, small hand. I turned to face the child's pleading eyes. I hesitated. Did I run or stay? In that moment, I felt the ground shift again, the whispers growing louder as they started to coalesce into a rhythm, echoing around me like a warning bell. "Find the way, find the way." Then everything went dark. I woke up again, disoriented. But this time the cold ground beneath me felt different, crisp and firm, like grass instead of tile. My heart raced as I sat up, scanning my surroundings. Dappled sunlight broke through the treetops, and the fresh air filled my lungs. But the calm didn't last. I felt the weight of something pressing on my chest, something that told me I wasn't out of danger yet. Slowly, I stood and brushed off dirt from my scrubs, glancing around. I was outside, in a clearing, but the strangeness of it all made my pulse quicken. The whispers were gone, replaced by distant rustling, a gentle reminder of things left unfinished. I stumbled a few paces, the sunlight bringing clarity but the uncertainty still clinging to my thoughts. As I adjusted to the light, I noticed someone standing at the edge of the clearing. A flicker of dread washed over me when I realized it was one of the children, the same one who had pointed down the hallway. "Emily?" I called, my voice wavering. The child's eyes locked onto mine, intense and pleading. When she didn't respond, I stepped forward, growing bolder with each heartbeat. "Where are the others? What do you need?" She pointed past the clearing, toward a horizon dusted in shadows. I followed her gaze, feeling an inexplicable pull towards whatever lay ahead. The laughter from the hospital echoed faintly in my mind. "Is that where I have to go?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling the answer would be more complicated than a simple yes or no. The child darted forward, beckoning me to follow, and just like that, I was drawn back into the chaos. With trepidation, I chased after her. We wove through the trees, each step filled with the anticipation of encountering the other children, and perhaps finding answers. The path seemed to undulate beneath our feet, while shadows danced around us. As we approached the edge of the woods, the faint outline of the hospital loomed up ahead, a dark figure against the sky, calling me back into its depths. Was it real? Did any of it happen? Or was it a cruel trick of my exhaustion? "Help us," her voice echoed softly, the chant familiar yet deepening into something I felt in my bones. The others, they were trapped here. She was stuck here. I took a deep breath and steeled myself, pulling open the heavy door. The hospital interior swallowed me whole. Shadows crept along the walls, whispers resumed their sinister chorus, but this time they felt disorganized, frantic. I had to find Emily and the other kids. I had to understand what kept them tethered to this unshakable sense of loss. As I stepped back into the hall, I was swept away by an unseen force, images flashing before me in a whirlwind, a kaleidoscope of my memories and those of the children. I staggered, struggling to reconnect with reality, the whispers consuming me. I saw their faces flicker, pleading, terrified, calling out for freedom. The floor shifted as the atmosphere changed. More children stood before me, all with wide eyes, all whispering, "Help us. Forever." "Wait!" I shouted, but my voice barely cut through the din. As I moved deeper into the hospital, the reality felt more surreal. The lights flickered above me, shadows twisting as my senses spiraled. What fate awaited me if I ventured toward this truth? I found myself standing in that same storeroom where I'd first encountered the name Emily etched on that box, but now it was alive with movement. As I stepped inside, the children surrounded me in a blur, moving gracefully and yet derisively. "You have to help us. You have to find the way." I could feel their combined weight on my shoulders. I had entered a realm of lost souls. Was I meant to be their savior? Or would I only become another voice in their unending song? Before I could consider my next move, the hospital shifted, walls constricting around me. The hum grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of pleas that mashed together into one desperate call. I fought against the tide, but the grip of the shadows tightened. It was all too much. I stepped back, colliding with something solid. A door, perhaps, a path leading me out. But as I swung it open, I found myself facing nothing but darkness once again. The weight of their voices echoed in my mind, a haunting memory that would never be fully realized. I could only gasp, "Help us," and feel their collective sorrow pressed against my heart, the darkness swallowing all light. As the whispers faded away into the unknown, I felt something pull me deeper into the void, leaving the question hanging above me like a heavy fog. Had I truly escaped, or had I stepped into another layer of this enigma? The echoes rang in my ears, unresolved. "Help us, help us, help us."